Hi, I'm George and this is my own Samo. In this video I'll show you what I've done to solve a problem with some rogue cables in what we like to call our gaming room. This is just another bedroom that I put together really quick in order to carry on and start playing games on different platforms and consoles. Stick with me and I'll show you what I've done to solve the issue at hand. The main idea was to have a space where we can all go and relax, doing some shooting, racing, speed cars or solving some puzzles. Well, that, and because ever since my son got a PS4 from Santa, he took over the living room telly. It was time to take back the living room. I'm saying gaming table because it sounds way better than it actually is, a good old IKEA table. Anyway, it was about time to do something about it. First, I had to unplug everything and separate all the cables properly to know which is which, starting with the sound cube, which is my guitar amplifier, and I had to sacrifice it for the greater good. The problem behind it is that I only have one monitor in this room, not a proper telly, so I had to use an HDMI to VGA cable along with the sound extractor so I can hook the VGA end into the monitor and send the sound to some sort of a different amplifier or sound system. And since I had this cube laying around, I've put it to good use. After I've done a bit of dusting and even more cable separation, I switched on the glue gun. Handy little tool, this glue gun. Especially for tasks like these, it worked a treat. Started by adding some hot glue against the table first and tried to cover as best as I could the entire surface the extension will cover. I also wanted to add glue all around in between the extension and the table. There were some small gaps, thought it would be a good idea to seal it off. Next, I started to bring the electronics back in the picture one by one, starting with the monitor. Tried my best to make sure the power cable is as tidy as possible and it won't be loose and left just hanging in there. That was the problem in the first place. Now, since I have two different consoles here and only one monitor, I am using an HDMI switch to change from one console to another easily without the need of plugging and unplugging all HDMI cables whenever my son or yours truly wants to play on a different console. Therefore, I've done the same thing like with the power extension and glued the HDMI switch to secure it on the table. I plugged in the HDMI sound extractor that I'll be using and secured it against the table with some cable zip ties. Right away I realized I was a bit of an idiot and forgot to tie the HDMI to VGA cable as well. So I had to cut the zip tie, plug the second cable into the output port of the switch and add another zip tie that holds both cables together. After that was just a matter of plugging the VGA end of the cable in the monitor. Once that was done, I placed the first console back on the table and done the same thing with the power cable, making sure it's nice and tidy. Then I realized I'm even a bigger idiot than I originally thought, since I forgot to include the power cable for the sound extractor in the zip tie earlier. So I had to redo the whole cut and replace all over again. Finally, I plugged the HDMI cable from the console into port 1 of the HDMI switch. It was time for the second console to take its rightful place on the table. For this one, unfortunately, the power supply needs to sit behind the table since it's quite big and heavy. Last but not least, my nemesis for today, the sound cube. My camera wasn't filming at the time, but there was a third time I thought to myself, what an idiot. I realized I forgot to include the sound output cable in the zip tie that secures the sound extractor against the table leg, so I had to redo it all over again. Once I was finally done with that, had to test the entire setup to make sure it still works. Both consoles were working just fine, but like all things around my house that have to do with gaming, they need to have my son's seal of approval. Hit a bit of a bump later on. Apparently the console that was supplying the power to the HDMI extractor wasn't pushing enough. Another problem was that the HDMI switch needs to have its own power supply, otherwise it tends to turn the HDMI signal on and off randomly. Didn't have the spare one around the house, so I ordered the new one from eBay and added that to the monster setup in there, all working smooth now. Like every time, thanks for watching my video. You can leave any comments in the section below and we'll see you next time. Cheers!